Really quick, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and I don't want anybody to think that I'm not thinking about these guys. Honorable mentions: Daniel Cormier, Yoel Romero, Ben Askren, and Kamaru Usman. Anyways, let's jump to top five. Tatiana Suarez. She is an absolute animal. She has pretty much the best wrestling of any woman, in my opinion, in the women's divisions. Most of the women who are dominant are strikers, they're kickboxers, they're boxers, they're Muay Thai fighters, they're even karate fighters. There's not a lot of grapplers in the women's divisions. Tatiana Suarez stands out like no one else. Tatiana Suarez is so good at being able to grapple, get people to the ground, jiu-jitsu. She just got her brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Her wrestling ability is unbelievable, and it's number 4, Colby Covington. What Colby Covington did to Robbie Lawler just a few months ago was unbelievable. No matter how many times Robbie got up, Colby was able to just easily sit him back down onto the canvas, and Robbie couldn't do anything about it. And this isn't a scrub by any means. This is a former champ. This is a guy who is very, very accoladed, very, very well known for every aspect of his fighting, and Colby Covington made him look like an undercard fighter. I mean, he really did, and no disrespect to Robbie Lawler, but he really just mauled him that entire fight, and it wasn't even a problem. And part of that makes it so interesting and so the reason I want to give him so much praise is he didn't stop. And even when he wasn't on the ground, that's going into Colby Covington, but his ability to hold Robbie Lawler down and his ability to not submit him necessarily, but just control him at all times of that fight. There wasn't any time that Robbie Lawler was winning that fight, per se, because of Colby Covington's wrestling. Number 3, and I think this is a little bit low, but for MMA wrestling, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib Nurmagomedov is an absolutely unbelievable wrestler. We've seen it. We've seen him hold guys down. We've seen him dominate. And everyone knows his game plan going into it. Everybody knows that Khabib is going to shoot in, go in for the takedown, and then he's going to wrap up your legs, and then he's going to smash your face. Do you remember what Dustin Poirier said when he was in his corner at the last, or do you remember what Dustin Poirier said to his corner? He said, guys, I can't keep him off of me. I can't keep him off of me. And that is the aspect of wrestling that makes that makes wrestling so important. Like, wrestling is the most important base because of that. If you can't keep a guy off of you, you can't you can't keep distance. You can't strike with him. You can't do everything you want to. Khabib's wrestling is next level, and it is something that is so adapted to the sport of MMA that it in a lot of ways, it's almost unstoppable, unless you're a 10th planet black belt like Tony Ferguson. Number 2, the only note I wrote for this was bend the knee, Brick. Bend the knee to Triple C. Gold medalist, my man, Henry Cejudo. Here's what's incredible about Henry Cejudo, and this is what I always tell people about why I love him so much. His backup is his wrestling, his gold medal wrestling. His striking is incredible, but he is so good at wrestling. Demetrius Johnson too. How did he beat Demetrius Johnson? It wasn't from striking. It was from being able to close the distance, hold Demetrius Johnson down. And Demetrius Johnson, like you said, was a Jose Aldo of the 125-pound division. I'm going to go a little bit further. A lot of people consider Demetrius Johnson the greatest fighter of all time. And I don't necessarily think that, but I think he's the most technical fighter. Because when you're smaller and you're not as strong as everybody else, your technique has to be absolutely flawless. And that's what Demetrius Johnson was. And Henry Cejudo's wrestling was able to win him that fight and beat one of the greatest of all time. Or let's look at when Marlon Moraes lost to Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo was getting chopped up. His legs were getting chopped up. His ankle was injured. He was trying to keep his distance and be able to strike with him, but he was like, Marlon's bigger, Marlon's faster, Marlon's stronger. But what does Henry Cejudo have that he can literally go into his back pocket and beat almost anybody in the world, as we've seen? He can use his wrestling, and he can pull it out at any time, and he is so good at it. And that's what won him his fight against Marlon Moraes, being able to hold him down onto the ground and then ground and pound. Number 1, and this is very much so recency bias, Mark Madsen. I am so excited to see what he can do. He looked so good. And the reason I say that is he was a silver medalist just 3 years ago. Henry Cejudo, he won his gold medal 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago. Mark Madsen is very polished. Mark Madsen is very, very aware of his ground and grappling game, and he is very fresh. I'm so excited to see what he does. And honestly, let's put Mark, I know he just got set up for a fight, but let's put up Mark Madsen versus a Gregor Gillespie. That would be an unbelievable grappling match, a Damian Maia, Ben Askren-esque type fight, where Gregor Gillespie is also one of my honorable mentions. But anyways, that's my top 5 wrestlers.